Right now, your internal organs are running on this microscopic schedule that is honestly more precise than a Swiss watch.
Oh, absolutely. It's an incredibly tight system.
Yeah. And if your liver, for example, thinks it's 8 in the morning, but your brain thinks it's midnight, you know,
Yeah.
you aren't just going to feel a little groggy. You are actively laying the groundwork for chronic disease.
You really are. Every single cell in your body is essentially a tiny clock, just, ticking away in this synchronized rhythm.
Right. And right now, as you listen to this, that invisible biological metronome is either dictating a state of vibrant, effortless health, or it is quietly ticking its way toward absolute systemic chaos.
It really is the ultimate invisible force. I mean, we don't see it, we rarely ever think about it, and yet it's governing the entire physiological reality of our bodies.
It's just wild.
It is. We tend to treat our bodies like machines, things that can just be switched on and off whenever it's convenient for us. We completely ignore the fact that we are organisms intrinsically tied to, well, planetary cycles.
Exactly. And today, we are going to look at the instruction manual for that invisible force. We're pulling insights from a really fascinating deep dive into the Ultimate Human Platform with Gary Brecka. And our mission today is incredibly specific.
Very specific, yeah.
We are going to unpack what is essentially the ultimate human cheat code hiding in plain sight, your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because I know what you, the listener, might be thinking right now. You're probably thinking, yeah, I know. I need to get 8 hours of sleep. I should really go to bed earlier.
Right, the standard advice everyone hears a million times.
Exactly. But tease that thought aside for just a minute, because today we are not just telling you to sleep. We're going to explore the actual fundamental cellular mechanics of how your body's internal timing dictates literally everything. I mean, from your metabolic insulin sensitivity to the physical cleaning of your brain tissue.
And that, I think, is the crucial distinction here. This isn't just another conversation about feeling a little less tired on a Tuesday afternoon, or finding some new life hack to squeeze an extra 10 minutes of productivity out of your morning.
Right. It goes way deeper than that.
Way deeper. This is about understanding the foundational architecture of human biology. The data we're looking at makes it just abundantly clear, aligning our modern, incredibly chaotic, screen-filled lives with these ancient biological cycles isn't just some wellness trend.
No, definitely.
It is a biological imperative. If you don't understand the mechanisms, you are essentially flying blind.
So let's ground this in the biology right away.
Yeah.
So I want to make this concrete. What is actually happening in the brain to create this circadian rhythm? Because, like we said, it's not just a metaphorical concept. There's a physical structure driving this, right? The master clock.
Precisely, yeah. It's a very specific cluster of about 20,000 neurons. It's located in the hypothalamus, right above where the optic nerves cross. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN for short. And this tiny, tiny region is the master pacemaker.
So this is the boss.
It is the absolute boss. It governs when you feel awake, when your core temperature rises, when your digestion slows down, and it is heavily, heavily influenced by external cues in your environment.
Like light.
Primarily light, yes, and also temperature. It is your body's literal physical mechanism for synchronizing its internal chemistry with the rotation of the planet.
That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
But the stakes of getting that synchronization wrong are what really caught my attention in the source material. If we look at the data they highlighted from the Journal of Clinical Investigation, the risks of circadian misalignment are just staggering.
They really are terrifying.
They outline a direct association with severe neurological disorders, we're talking Alzheimer's, deep psychiatric conditions like depression and bipolar disorder, and then massive metabolic disasters, including obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and severe immune dysfunction.
Yes. And honestly, that list of diseases usually stops people dead in their tracks because it sounds almost hyperbolic. Like, how could one single thing cause all of that?
Well, exactly. Hold on. Because Alzheimer's, for instance, is fundamentally a disease of plaque buildup, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, amyloid beta plaques and tau protein tangles that misfold and destroy neurons over time. If we were just talking about a sleep timer being off, how on earth does going to bed at irregular hours trigger a structural, physical, neurological disease? The mechanics of that seem like a massive leap.
It definitely seems like a leap until you understand the actual plumbing of the human brain, and this is where the why becomes so endlessly fascinating.
Okay, break it down for us.
So during the day, as your neurons fire and your brain uses energy, it produces metabolic waste. It's just a natural byproduct of thinking and being awake. One of those waste products happens to be amyloid beta.
The Alzheimer's plaque stuff.
Exactly. Now, the brain doesn't have a traditional lymphatic system to clear this waste out like
Yes.
the rest of your body does. You don't have lymph nodes in your brain. Instead, it relies on something called the glymphatic system.
Which is essentially the brain's customized power washing mechanism, right?
That is the perfect way to describe it. It's a power washer. And here is the absolutely crucial connection to the circadian rhythm. The glymphatic system does not run actively while you are awake.
Wait, really? Not at all.
Barely at all. It is strictly controlled by that master clock, the SCN. When your circadian clock signals that it is time for deep non-REM sleep, the glial cells in your brain actually shrink in size.
They physically shrink.
Yes, by up to 60%.
Oh my God.
Right. This creates physical space between the cells for cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and literally wash the amyloid beta plaques and other neurotoxins right out of your brain tissue.
That is incredible.
But if your master clock is misaligned, say you're staying up super late or your sleep is fragmented, you aren't hitting those specific, perfectly timed, deep sleep cycles. And if you don't hit those cycles, the power washer never turns on.
So the trash just sits there.
Exactly. The plaques accumulate. And over decades, not days, but decades, that chronic misalignment manifests as Alzheimer's.
Wow. So the circadian rhythm isn't just telling you to go to sleep. It is the literal trigger switch for the biological maintenance crew.
Yes, precisely.
And I imagine this same logic applies to the psychiatric and metabolic conditions mentioned in the data. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to stop thinking of the circadian rhythm as just an alarm clock in the brain.
Right. It's so much more dynamic than that.
Is it essentially like the conductor of an orchestra? Because in my head, I'm picturing this grand, highly complex symphony. You have the string section, which is your metabolic system. You have the brass section, which is your neurology. The percussion is your immune system.
I love this analogy. Keep going.
So if the SCN, the conductor, is standing at the podium and he's wildly waving his baton completely out of rhythm because he's, I don't know, drunk on artificial light and bad timing, the string section starts playing a waltz while the brass section is playing heavy metal.
That is exactly what is happening down to the cellular level, because every organ in your body, your liver, your pancreas, your muscle tissue, they all have their own peripheral clocks.
Well, they do?
Yes. They are the musicians in your orchestra. And the SCN is the conductor. So when the conductor loses the beat, the liver might start producing glucose at the exact same moment the pancreas stops producing insulin.
Oh, wow.
That biological miscommunication, that terrible clashing noise in the symphony, is what we call diabetes. It is what we call obesity. It is literally the sound of biological instruments playing violently out of sync.
That makes so much sense. So if the circadian rhythm is the conductor and the organs are the orchestra, then the physical act of sleep has to be the actual music being played.
Beautifully put.
Which leads us to a massive revelation in this deep dive regarding the foundation of sleep. The Ultimate Human Platform refers to sleep as the absolute foundational cornerstone of health, but the mechanics of how they suggest fixing it are incredibly rigid.
They are rigid because, well, biology is uncompromising. It doesn't care about our social schedules. They reference this massive recent sleep study involving thousands of people tracking deep physiological data over long periods of time.
And what was the big takeaway?
The most critical action, like the absolute non-negotiable rule that emerged from all that data, is getting to bed and waking up at the exact same time every single day. And the researchers put a massive, bold underline under the phrase, especially on weekends.
Okay, and this is where I really want to push back on behalf of anyone listening who works a grueling Monday through Friday schedule. I need to understand the mechanics here. Are you telling me that the glorious concept of catching up on sleep on a Saturday morning is a complete physiological myth?
I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but yes.
Because, I mean, if I sleep in until 11 a.m. on Sunday because I am utterly exhausted from the work week, am I actually self-sabotaging? It feels like I'm doing my body a favor. I feel rested.
It feels like a favor because we have been conditioned to think of sleep as a transactional bank account.
Right, like a debt I have to pay off.
Exactly. We think, oh, I'm in debt 5 hours from the work week, so I will just deposit 5 extra hours on Saturday and my biological ledger will balance. But the human body does not run on accounting principles. It runs on predictability.
Okay.
To understand why sleeping in is self-sabotage, we have to look really closely at the two critical metrics that this massive sleep study measured: recovery and strain.
Okay, let's get into the weeds on those.
Yeah.
How is the body actually measuring recovery and strain? Because honestly, those sound like subjective feelings, not hard data points like, I feel strained today.
Oh, they are very hard data points. Recovery is measured primarily through the autonomic nervous system. It looks at the balance between your sympathetic branch, which is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic branch, which is the rest and digest system.
Got it.
When recovery is high, your body is effectively executing that cellular repair we talked about earlier, the glymphatic wash in the brain, the release of human growth hormone for tissue repair. Everything is fixing itself.
And the second metric?
And the second metric, strain, is the really fascinating one. Strain is often measured through heart rate variability, or HRV. It measures how well adapted and prepared the central nervous system is to handle physiological stress on any given day.
So how does sleeping in on a weekend destroy those metrics? If I'm getting more sleep, shouldn't my recovery go up?
Because it creates what chronobiologists call social jet lag.
Social jet lag.
Yeah. When you wake up at 6 a.m. all week, your SCN master clock starts preparing your body for 6 a.m. hours in advance. It begins raising your core body temperature, releasing a slow wave of cortisol to make you alert, getting the engine ready to go.
Makes sense.
But if Saturday rolls around and you force your body to stay asleep, just ignoring those massive chemical signals until 10 or 11 a.m., you are actively introducing deep physiological stress. You are artificially inducing the exact same biological confusion as if you just flew across 4 time zones.
Wow. It's like the engine is revving in the driveway, burning fuel and creating all this heat, but you refuse to open the garage door.
Precisely. You are driving up that strain metric. Your body is incredibly confused, and then the real damage happens on Sunday night.
Oh, the Sunday scaries.
Exactly. You try to go to bed at 10 p.m. to be ready for Monday morning, but because you slept until 11 a.m. on Sunday, your master clock has shifted. It thinks you are in a different time zone. Chemically, it refuses to release melatonin.
Because it thinks it's what, late afternoon?
Exactly. So you lie there awake, staring at the ceiling, experiencing massive autonomic stress, and when Monday morning hits, it is physically, literally painful to wake up.
That pain is the metric of strain.
Yes, you have unadapted your body to its own life. The body craves predictability far, far more than it craves sheer volume of sleep.
That is incredibly sobering. The consistency is the anchor. But how does the master clock, this SCN locked inside a pitch-black skull, actually know what time it is to maintain that consistency? I mean, it doesn't have a wristwatch.
No, it doesn't. It relies on a very specific biological pathway connected directly to the sky.
Which brings us to the most visually compelling and frankly actionable part of this entire analysis, the mechanics of light exposure, the epic battle between the morning sun and our midnight screens. The insights from Gary Brecka outline a very clear mandate. You need 10 to 15 minutes of outside morning sunlight.
Yes.
And there's a very specific physiological reason why it has to be outside and why it has to be morning.
Absolutely. And this is where we have to talk about something called melanopsin. Inside your eyes, you have rods and cones, right? Those are what help you see shapes and colors.
Right, standard biology class stuff.
Exactly. But you also have a completely different set of receptors called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs for short.
That is a mouthful.
It is, but they are so important. These cells contain a photopigment called melanopsin. And here's the crazy part. Their primary job is not visual sight.
Wait, really? They don't help you see?
No. Their job is purely to detect the specific wavelength of blue light scattered by the atmosphere at sunrise. When they detect it, they send a direct, high-speed neural signal straight to the SCN clock in your brain to say, the day has begun, stop the melatonin, start the cortisol.
That is wild. And the data introduces this concept of first light, which is the first 45 minutes of the day immediately following sunrise. What I found absolutely captivating about this is the physics of why this window is so uniquely healing.
Oh, the physics are brilliant.
Right. The analysis points out that during this specific 45-minute window, the sunlight contains that healthy clock-setting blue light, but it has zero UVA or UVB rays.
Which is a critical distinction for anyone worried about skin damage or photoaging. You know, people are terrified of the sun right now.
Exactly, but let's explain the why behind that, because it feels almost like magic until you look at the atmospheric physics. At sunrise, the sun is at a very low angle on the horizon. Right?
Correct.
So the sunlight has to travel through a much thicker slice of the Earth's atmosphere to reach your eyes than it does at noon when it's directly overhead. Because of that extreme angle and that atmospheric thickness, the shorter, more damaging ultraviolet wavelengths, the UVA and UVB, are completely scattered and absorbed before they even reach the ground.
Yes.
But the blue light, which has a slightly longer wavelength, penetrates perfectly. So first light is this incredibly safe, biologically potent window where you can expose your eyes and skin to a massive dose of circadian setting lux, which is light intensity, without any fear of cellular damage.
It is nature's perfect mechanism. And the analysis notes it's also a time when you can safely start the cascade for vitamin D3 generation, setting the tone for your immune system for the rest of the day.
Now, I know someone listening is immediately thinking, well, I live in London or Seattle, and it's raining and heavily overcast 8 months out of the year. The sun is blocked.
A very common concern.
Right. But the material provided a really elegant biological workaround for bad weather or freezing temperatures. You don't have to go stand outside in a blizzard. You can get near a window, gaze out on the natural horizon, and just soak up the ambient daylight.
Yeah, because even on an overcast day, the sheer lux value of natural ambient outdoor light is exponentially higher than the brightest indoor light bulb you own.
Oh, really? Even through clouds?
Oh, absolutely. By thousands of lux. The act of gazing at the natural horizon, letting that specific spectrum of daylight hit those melanopsin receptors in your eyes, is enough to start the clock.
Because those receptors are highly sensitive, but they need the correct spectrum.
Oh.
Which leads us directly into the dark side of this equation, the technology trap. We have to look at the severe biological confusion caused by artificial light at night.
Yes, the midnight screens.
Right. The source material details how the artificial blue light radiating from our phones, tablets, and laptops completely derails this master clock. They strongly advise limiting all screens at least 1 hour before bed,
Right.
and utilizing tools like red screen settings.
Yeah, specifically mentioning the iOS feature where you can turn your screen a deep ruby red at a certain time each night to mitigate the damage.
But I want to linger on this irony for a second. Let's talk about the difference between natural blue light and artificial blue light. Because on paper, they sound like the exact same thing.
They share a similar wavelength, yes, but the context and intensity make them entirely different biological inputs.
Right. Natural blue light from the sun, the first light, wakes us up, sets our clock, and heals our brain. But the artificial blue light radiating from our phones essentially poisons our sleep cycle. It's like the difference between eating an apple that you picked off a tree and eating a piece of apple-flavored hard candy.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. They might share a name, blue light or apple, but one is actual complex biological fuel that your body evolved over millions of years to consume. The other is a hyper-concentrated synthetic imposter that is actively toxic to your system when you consume it out of context.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. And let's look at the actual molecular mechanics of that synthetic imposter. Say it is 11:30 p.m. You are lying in bed, the room is pitch dark, but you are holding a smartphone 6 inches from your face, just endlessly scrolling.
Doom scrolling. We've all been there.
We all do it. The IPRGC receptors in your eyes are absorbing that intense, hyper-focused artificial blue light.
The apple-flavored candy.
Right. And because of the proximity to your eyes and the specific wavelength of those LED screens, those receptors send a massive, urgent electrical signal to the SCN master clock. And the signal doesn't say, hey, he's just looking at a phone. The signal says, alert. The sun is directly overhead. It is high noon.
So the brain genuinely believes it is the middle of the day.
Completely. The SCN receives that signal and immediately fires a message down to the pineal gland, which is the tiny structure in the brain responsible for manufacturing melatonin.
And what's the message?
The message is, halt all melatonin production immediately. It just slams the brakes on the sleep hormone because, logically, why would the body release a powerful sedative hormone in the middle of a bright, sunny day?
It wouldn't. That would be dangerous.
Exactly. So by staring at that screen, you are chemically castrating your body's ability to enter the recovery phase. You might eventually exhaust your central nervous system into a state of unconsciousness just from pure fatigue, but you are not getting deep, restorative, glymphatic, washing sleep. Your brain is chemically trapped in daytime mode.
It's almost tragic when you realize how hard we are fighting our own biology without even knowing it. We are effectively lying to our own brains.
We really are.
But light isn't the only thing that sets our internal clock. If light dictates the master clock in the brain, what dictates those peripheral clocks we talked about earlier? The ones in the liver, the gut, and the muscles.
This is where it gets so interesting.
Right. The insights we're exploring make a fascinating pivot here from what we see to what we eat. Chrononutrition.
Yes, the timing of your fuel. This is where we move from neurology into endocrinology.
The data here absolutely blew me away. They cite a pivotal study published in Interface Focus. It reveals that aligning our eating rhythms with our circadian rhythms directly reduces the risk of obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and coronary artery disease.
It's incredible.
It all comes back to how consistency regulates hunger hormones like ghrelin and leptin and deeply impacts blood sugar levels.
But we have to explain why timing matters for food. A lot of people think a calorie is just a calorie. But a calorie consumed at 8 a.m. does not have the same metabolic destiny as that exact same calorie consumed at 8 p.m.
Explain that mechanism. How does the time of day actually change the physical reality of a calorie?
It comes down to insulin sensitivity and the peripheral clocks in your digestive system. In the morning, under the influence of that rising cortisol and the master clock's daytime signals, your pancreas is highly sensitive. Your muscle cells are primed to absorb glucose and use it for energy.
So the sponge is dry and ready to soak it up.
Exactly. You eat a carbohydrate, your body easily shuttles it into the cells, and your blood sugar remains totally stable. But as the sun goes down and melatonin begins to rise, the peripheral clocks in your pancreas and your liver begin to shut down their active daytime operations.
They're clocking out for the night.
They literally are. They become naturally insulin resistant in the evening. Their metabolic shift is prioritizing cellular repair, not digestion. So if you eat that exact same carbohydrate at 8 p.m., your body has to pump out significantly more insulin to manage it.
Because the cells aren't absorbing it easily anymore.
Right. So the glucose lingers in your bloodstream longer, and it is far more likely to be stored as visceral fat.
Which brings us to what I think is the hardest, most brutal rule in this entire deep dive. The pre-bed fasting rule.
Oh, this one is tough for people.
The mandate is this. You must try to have your last meal at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. The researchers emphasized this so heavily. They looked at the biometrics during their massive sleep challenge, and stopping food intake 2 to 3 hours before bed was the critical differentiator between profound recovery and massive strain.
It's the needle mover.
3 hours is the biological goal. 2 hours is the absolute minimum.
And this goes beyond just insulin resistance. We have to look at the internal war between digestion and sleep.
A literal competition for biological resources.
Exactly. Digestion is an incredibly energy-intensive physiological process. It creates a massive thermic effect, meaning it generates a lot of internal heat to break down food. It also requires massive blood flow to be shunted toward the stomach and the intestines.
Okay.
Now think about what the body must do to initiate deep restorative sleep. As we will discuss in depth shortly, the body absolutely must drop its core body temperature by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit to enter deep sleep. It also needs to redirect blood flow and energy away from the digestive tract and toward the brain and the muscle tissue for repair.
So if I eat a heavy protein-dense dinner at 9 p.m. and then immediately get into bed at 10 p.m.
Your body is a furnace. The thermic effect of breaking down that protein means your core temperature is rising at the exact moment it desperately needs to fall.
That sounds miserable.
It is. Your heart rate is elevated because of the digestive workload. You cannot shift into a parasympathetic, restful state. You have essentially forced your internal organs to run a physiological marathon while you are lying perfectly still under the covers.
Wow.
The result is shallow, fragmented sleep and terrible HRV scores the next morning.
Okay, I have to ground this in reality for you, the listener, because I feel the collective sigh happening right now.
Yeah.
Let's be real about the modern world. You commute home from the office, you sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic, you walk in the door, just utterly exhausted at 7 p.m.
It's the reality for millions of people.
Right. You finally cook something. Or maybe you're wrangling kids, and suddenly you're eating dinner at 8 or 8:30 p.m. But you're so physically exhausted that you desperately want to be asleep by 10 p.m. The reality of modern life makes this 2 to 3 hour fasting window feel incredibly hard, if not practically impossible.
It does.
The material even acknowledges this. They mentioned the 9 to 5 workers who struggle deeply with this, conceding that they must shoot for that absolute minimum of a 2-hour window. But from a behavioral standpoint, how do people realistically shift their mindset here? How do you go from, I will eat whenever I have free time because I am so stressed, to, I am strictly eating on a biological schedule?
It requires a profound reframing of what we consider self-care. It really raises an important question about the architecture of our society. Like, why have we normalized a daily schedule that actively, violently fights our evolutionary biology?
That is heavy. But it's so true. I mean, the commute itself is an evolutionary mismatch.
It is. The lengthy commutes, the culture of constant availability, the late-night emails, It all forces us into behaviors that contradict how our bodies evolved to function. Shifting that mindset requires viewing that hard boundary on late-night eating not as a restrictive diet and not as a punishment, but as a non-negotiable protective boundary.
I love that. A protective boundary.
Exactly. You are protecting your body's inherent right to heal itself. If you fundamentally understand the mechanics, that eating at 8:30 p.m. and sleeping at 10 p.m. guarantees you will wake up unrecovered, biologically strained, and inflamed with elevated blood sugar.
Then the calculus changes.
Suddenly, figuring out how to eat a larger meal at lunch or prepping a lighter, earlier dinner becomes an urgent health priority, not just an inconvenient chore.
It's about respecting the biological machine. Using the car analogy again, you wouldn't pour gasoline into your car's engine while it was turned off and sitting in the garage for the night.
No, that would be absurd.
The fuel just sits there, potentially
Got it.
flooding the engine. You fuel it when it needs to run, which is during the day.
Exactly. And the body needs strict boundaries for food, just like it needs strict boundaries for light. But as the deep dive outlines next, it also has highly specific, chemically driven windows for physical exertion and mental stress.
Which naturally leads us into movement and mental well-being, timing the physical peaks and the mental valleys. According to the data, our bodies are naturally more alert and physically capable at very specific times of the day.
They are.
Key physical capability, meaning your highest core body temperature and your peak muscle function and reaction time, actually occurs in the late morning to early afternoon.
Which is fascinating because it totally challenges the two most common, almost culturally mandated workout times. You know, the 5 a.m. pre-dawn boot camp and the 7 p.m. post-work exhaustion gym session.
Right.
Biologically, the human body is perfectly primed for intense exertion right in the middle of the day.
But again, the insights offer a practical concession here, what I like to call the consistency loophole. The researchers acknowledge that not everyone can sneak away from their corporate desk at 1 p.m. to go do heavy deadlifts.
If only.
Right. So the loophole is this. Even if you cannot work out at your biological peak time, exercising for just 20 minutes at the exact same time every single day reinforces the circadian rhythm.
Because, once again, we return to the nervous system's desperate love of predictability. The peripheral clocks in your skeletal muscle tissue are highly adaptable.
Oh, so they can learn.
Yes. If you consistently demand physical exertion at 7 a.m., the body will adapt its internal clock. It will begin spiking your cortisol and raising your body temperature at 6:30 a.m. to prepare the muscle tissue for that specific anticipated demand.
Here is how I see this. Working out at random, wildly inconsistent times like a morning run on Monday, a late-night spin class on Wednesday, a noon yoga class on Friday sounds like trying to force a car into fifth gear while you're still navigating a crowded parking lot.
That's exactly what it's like.
You have to wait for the body to be on the highway. You have to give it a predictable route so it can shift gears efficiently.
And that predictable route isn't just about athletic performance or muscle hypertrophy. It is deeply, inextricably tied to mental health and hormonal balance. The material explicitly links aligning our activities to enhancing our baseline mental well-being.
Yeah, they talk about the absolute biological necessity of engaging in stimulating, high-stress or highly social activities strictly during the day and then purposefully winding down in the evening.
Because that regulates the critical balance between cortisol and melatonin, the waking hormone and the sleeping hormone.
Let's break down that cortisol melatonin seesaw because I think understanding this dynamic is the key to understanding modern mood disorders, burnout, and daily anxiety.
It really is the root of so much misery right now.
Cortisol gets a terrible reputation in wellness circles. It's constantly demonized as the stress hormone that makes you fat and anxious. But cortisol is vital for human survival, right?
It is absolutely vital. It is what gets you out of bed in the morning. In a healthy circadian rhythm, you experience something called the cortisol awakening response, or CR.
Okay, the CR.
Right. Cortisol spikes sharply in the morning, triggered precisely by that first light hitting your melanopsin receptors, and it slowly, naturally tapers off as the day progresses into the afternoon.
So it's a gradual slope down.
Yes. As cortisol drops down into its lowest trough in the evening, melatonin rises. It is a perfectly balanced, biologically mandated seesaw.
One side goes up, the other side must go down. They cannot occupy the high ground at the same time.
Exactly. They are chemically antagonistic. But what happens when you introduce intense psychological or physical stress late at night? What happens when you do a grueling, high-intensity CrossFit workout at 8 p.m.?
Or, you spend 2 hours scrolling through enraging, anxiety-inducing political news on your phone under bright blue LED light at 10:30 p.m.
Yes. You essentially slam your foot down on the cortisol side of the seesaw.
Just break the whole playground equipment.
Pretty much. You flood the central nervous system with cortisol and adrenaline at the exact moment it expects a trough. And chemically, high levels of cortisol actively block the brain's melatonin receptors.
Oh, wow. It physically blocks them.
It physically blocks them. It completely dismantles the nighttime biological valley. You cannot medically enter a state of neurological recovery. And over time, this chronic daily imbalance between cortisol and melatonin doesn't just make you feel a bit tired.
It does real damage.
It structurally drives mood disorders. It exacerbates generalized anxiety, it crushes your emotional resilience, and it deeply destabilizes your baseline mental well-being.
So the overarching goal of this entire circadian protocol is to manage the daytime peaks successfully, riding that natural cortisol wave in the morning and afternoon, so that we can successfully, intentionally engineer the nighttime valley.
That is the whole game right there.
But how do we actually do that? When our brains are wired with the stress of the day, how do we consciously force the cortisol seesaw back down?
That is the perfect transition into the final and perhaps most actionable piece of this biological puzzle. The lost art of the evening routine, or what the scientific and medical community clinically refers to as sleep hygiene.
The analysis was incredibly blunt about this. They found in their massive sleep study that the vast majority of people simply do not have a sleep routine. They have terrible behavioral sleep hygiene.
Oh, the worst. We're all guilty of it.
And they point out this bizarre, almost comical contradiction in human behavior. We meticulously plan routines for our workouts. We strategize our career progression for years. We have exact, to-the-minute routines for getting our kids fed and out the door to school.
But we do nothing for sleep.
Nothing. We entirely neglect a routine for the one fundamental biological process that keeps our brains from deteriorating.
We treat sleep as an electronic on-off switch, rather than what it actually is, a physiological gradual descent.
Right. We just expect to sprint through our evening, dive into bed at 11 p.m., close our eyes, and instantly power down like a laptop.
Which is physically impossible.
Exactly. But the researchers heavily advocate for a dedicated wind-down protocol, designing an evening of specifically calming, parasympathetic-driven activities. They suggest reading physical books, gentle stretching, or yoga, meditation.
It is about intentionally sending an environmental signal to the master clock that the day and all its associated threats are over.
It's about deliberately lowering that cortisol. But the source material also provides a highly specific physiological hack to physically force the body into that nighttime valley, bypassing the brain's stubbornness.
Yes, the contrast therapy hack.
I have to admit, I read this part 3 times because it sounded so completely counterintuitive to everything I thought I knew about temperature and sleep.
It does sound crazy at first.
They suggest a very specific pre-bed biohack, taking a very warm shower, and then following it with a short 30 to 45-second burst of cold water right before you exit the shower and get into bed.
Yes. And they put a massive flashing neon sign caveat here that we must emphasize.
Yet this is not a full morning cold plunge. It is just a short, controlled burst of cold water.
That caveat is crucial. A 3-minute ice bath will trigger a massive release of norepinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol, preparing you to fight a saber-toothed tiger. That is strictly morning behavior.
Okay, so I have to push back on this on behalf of myself and everyone listening who fundamentally hates being cold. A blast of cold water right before bed sounds terrible.
I know people hate this one.
Even if it's only 30 seconds, it sounds like it would send my cortisol through the roof anyway, jolt me wide awake, and leave me shivering and alert under the blankets.
Yeah.
If cold plunges wake you up, why does this specific 30-second contrast therapy actually put you to sleep?
To understand this, we have to go back to the thermal dynamics we discussed during the chrononutrition segment. Remember, the absolute prerequisite for deep sleep.
The core body temperature must drop by 1 to 2 degrees.
Exactly. Your body is constantly managing heat transfer. When you take a very warm shower for 10 minutes before bed, you are artificially heating the surface of your skin.
Right.
Your body senses this heat and tries to cool itself down by expanding the blood vessels near the surface of the skin, a process called vasodilation. It is pulling the warm blood away from your deep core organs and pushing it out to the extremities, to your hands and feet, trying to vent the heat into the environment. Okay, that makes sense. It's like a radiator pushing heat to the outer fins.
Exactly. So now, your warm blood is lingering right at the surface of your skin. Then you hit it with that 30 to 45-second burst of cold water.
Boom, freezing cold.
The cold water hits the surface of your skin and causes immediate, intense vasoconstriction. The blood vessels on the surface suddenly clamp down tight to protect the body from the cold.
Okay, I follow you.
But because you've just pulled all that warm blood to the surface with the warm water, you're essentially flash cooling that surface blood.
Hmm.
When that freshly cooled blood gets pushed back into the interior of your body, the rapid cooling effect acts as a massive thermal dump.
Oh, wow.
It rapidly and efficiently drops your deep core body temperature. You bypass the slow chemical delay and mechanically force the thermostat down. It provides the exact physiological thermal signal that the SCN master clock is waiting for it to say, ah, the core temperature has rapidly dropped, the sun has set, release the melatonin flood, initiate deep sleep. That is absolutely phenomenal. You aren't just enduring cold. You are biohacking the body's radiator system to trick the circadian clock into jump-starting the sleep cascade.
Exactly.
It is literal, mechanical, biological engineering.
It is. You are using physics to manipulate biology. And it works beautifully, provided you followed the other steps throughout the day to set the proper hormonal stage.
So let's rapidly recap these actionable steps for the listener because the insights laid them out so clearly, and we want to make sure you have this exact toolkit ready to deploy tomorrow morning. Step 1. Set a consistent sleep schedule. Go to bed and wake up at the exact same time every single day. No weekend cheating. Stop inducing social jet lag.
Step 2. Get your morning first light, 10 to 15 minutes outside, or gazing at the horizon through a window to hit those melanopsin receptors with that healthy blue light, halt the melatonin, and start the biological clock.
Step 3. Regular meals or chrononutrition. Keep your eating schedule consistent, respect your evening insulin resistance, and implement the hard boundary stop eating at least 2 hours, preferably 3, before bedtime. Let the digestive engine cool down so your core temperature can drop.
Step 4. Regular daily exercise. Find a predictable time that works for you, ideally earlier in the day when the body is biologically primed for exertion, and make it a consistent daily habit to reinforce the rhythm in your peripheral muscle clocks.
And finally, step 5. Create a dedicated sleep hygiene routine. Curate your evening environment. Limit the screens. Lose the artificial melatonin-destroying blue light. Read a book, lower your cortisol, and try that warm shower with a 30-second cold burst to physically dump your core temperature.
It's a comprehensive system.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? When we zoom out from the cellular mechanics and look at all of this together, a profound realization emerges. Health isn't just about what we do. It's not just about eating a plate of spinach or running a mile on a treadmill. It is profoundly, deeply about when we do it.
The timing is the actual medicine. The biological timing is what allows the lifestyle interventions to work in the first place. I mean, you can eat the healthiest diet in the world, but if you eat it at midnight, your body will process it as a stressor.
And understanding that difference is deeply empowering. The core message of Gary Brecka's insights on the Ultimate Human Platform is fundamentally a message of profound agency. You, the listener, have the power to completely transform your physiological reality by simply tuning into your body's natural clock.
You really do.
You don't need a $1 million biohacking lab. You don't need experimental treatments. Small, highly specific, sustainable changes, like looking at the sky in the morning, honoring the consistency of your sleep, or putting your phone in another room at night yield massive systemic health dividends across your entire nervous system.
It truly is about reclaiming your biology from a modern world that demands you ignore it. And studying these mechanisms leaves me with a lingering thought, something to really chew on as we consider all this data.
Wow.
Well, if our human biology, down to the deepest cellular level, is this tightly bound to the rotation of the Earth, the cycle of the sun, and the drop in temperature, are most of our modern physical and mental ailments, the obesity, the burnout, the chronic anxiety, the neurological decline, simply the inevitable symptoms of trying to live outside of nature's timeline.
Wow.
What if the ultimate life hack isn't a new supplement or a new wearable app, but simply remembering that we are fundamentally a biological species that evolved on a spinning rock?
A spinning rock with a relentless, invisible, microscopic rhythm built into our very DNA. We're going to leave you to ponder that one tonight as the sun goes down. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of your own biology. Remember that ticking clock inside your cells we talked about at the very beginning. It's ticking right now. The only question is, are you going to fight it or are you going to let it lead the orchestra? Keep listening, keep learning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.